Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Please, before anything else, subscribe, do whatever you need to do to get those algorithms up. I appreciate it. I appreciate you viewing this video. This week's video is about witches. If you haven't gotten a chance to listen to the podcast, I will link it below or above, depending on how you're looking at this, so you can check it out. It was basically inspired by a docu-series I saw on another YouTube channel called In Praise of the Shadows. They did a 3-part docu-series on the history of witches. Obviously, they were talking about European witches, American witches, sort of more Caucasian white witches. They weren't talking about, because obviously if you're watching this and you know, there are different types of witches in the world. So their specific sort of, what they were talking about were European and American witches. So the first part of the series, the first episode, which is about an hour, talked about the history of the burning times in Europe. And then they talked about a little bit about Salem, the Salem witch trials as well. So that was the focus of that first episode. And then the second episode, if I remember correctly, was about sort of that stereotypical witch and music and art. And then there was a third one that I can't remember. But the series was really great. I'll also have a link to that as well. It's a very interesting talk. And so I kind of want to have my podcast based on that, because when talking about witches, we can talk all day about the different types of witches. So that one in particular was really interesting because it kind of started out with, like, in the 1400s with the burning of Joan of Arc. You know, she did so much. Now she's known as Saint Joan. But at the time, because she was such a strong person and such a strong female, they kind of basically, you know, accused her of witchcraft and accused her of being a witch. Because people, what else can people do when they find they find somebody annoying and they're envious of them? What else could they do but get them killed? So ridiculous. Basically accused her of witchcraft. She got burned at the stake. So that kind of started it off. And then there was the plague. But prior to the plague, older women, or hags, that was considered a really important and kind of like a big deal. Like if you were a hag, you know, not like now, like hags, like if somebody calls you a hag, that's like kind of bad. But back then, a woman of a certain age, if she was older, that was kind of looked at as a really big accomplishment because of all the different diseases, all the things that went down. Most people didn't have a big lifespan. My understanding is they lived until about 30 or 40. So if you were past 40, like if you were 45, you were like, wow, that's amazing. How'd you do that? You know? So yeah, it was a big deal. Now it's like, oh, you're a hag. I mean, it's a different kind of definition. So I talked a lot about this gentleman who wrote a book, basically the book that started all the witch trials and started all these rumors. So it's really messed up what he did. He wrote this because he was so well spoken, this gentleman. You have to go and check out the podcast to find out more. He wrote this book, which was just a bunch of lies, and no one knows why he wrote this book. And basically, he targeted women. He said that women in groups gossiped and they talked. He basically, in his book, kind of contradicted women. He would talk about how they weren't so smart. He would use fairer sex to say they weren't so smart, but yet they were so devious. Like the dude had like lady issues for sure. Like he hated them so much. So he started this witch trial, where basically anybody could accuse you of being a witch. And it was just like hearsay. So your neighbor may have not liked you, may have been like, so-and-so, I don't like her. Let's start a rumor she's a witch. And basically you die. It's kind of crazy to think that back then that someone could just start a rumor about you and then they'll take you to prison, torture you, put you on trial, and then kill you. And some of these people, because of the conditions of the prisons, died in prison, or they died during torture, or, not too many would last until the trial. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. But they targeted mostly women, especially women who met up in groups. So it was just kind of like, I don't know, it was just disgusting. So I talked about that a lot. I talked about how, in history, women always got the short end of the stick, basically. And so we talked about that. I want to do more episodes about witches and witchcraft. I want to specifically target certain groups, or talk about certain groups, I should say, and talk about their history. Let me know in the comments below what you think, what group I should do next. If there is a particular group that you particularly, if you're particularly a member of, I keep saying particularly, I don't know why. If you're a member of a certain group and you want to come on and talk about your group and talk about the history of your group, I would love to have you. Send me a DM or leave a comment. I find all this fascinating. And I guess this is under the occult part of my podcast. So, I find all sorts of stuff like that fascinating. I think maybe also another episode about witches in cinema, because in the docuseries they talk about that. They talk about like our depiction of witches, like the witches and witches, Wizard of Oz, and then they talk about Hocus Pocus and all these other kind of, types of witches. So if you want me to talk about more about witches, my next podcast, but specifically a certain type of witch, let me know, leave a comment. I'm also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link to the next episode below. So you're ahead of the time, you're ahead of the curve of everybody else, and you can listen to it before I release the video. I've been having really a great time with these podcasts and talking about this subject matter. If you have a suggestion for our next episode, I kind of have my podcast episodes and YouTube episodes pretty much written out already. But if you have a suggestion, if you want to come on and talk about a subject matter, let me know. You can find all my information in the description box. You can also, if you're watching this, you're probably a friend. You can find me whichever way you found me. And we can talk about stuff. If you want to come on the show, definitely, I'd love to have you. So thank you for watching this. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you. Don't forget to smash like, subscribe. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.